How you doing, everybody? My name is Warren Dews. I'm here with my good friend of mine. Who are you, my good friend?
Hey, Warren, it's Mark Vinciguerra, and I guess today my role will be the president of Capital Region Independent Media.
Yeah, Mark. Listen, man. I thought it was very important for us to get together and talk about, what we're doing. About I think 3 or 4 years ago, you called me up out of the blue and you told me you got this company called Capital Region Independent Media, and you asked me to join. I'm like, it's just great timing for me in my life. But tell everybody why you created Capital Region Independent Media.
Warren, it's funny you say that. Time has flown, hasn't it? I mean, it's been 3 or 4 years. Seems like it was 3 or 4 days in some cases, right? I mean, it's been like nobody's business. In fact, time has flown. You know, you and I both believe in the power of local journalism. I think, local journalism, time and time again, news content in each community is valued and trusted. We know that. We see that. We hear it. People get passionate about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very few days go by where we're not hearing from somebody about something, whether they're praising our coverage or they're very upset with our coverage or we're not covering something that they think we should be enough or at all. It, you know, it's so to me, this is a passion of mine, and I know it's a passion of yours that we help save local newspapers. There's two papers a week on average right now that close in the United States. That's amazing if you think about it. There's whole counties that are news deserts where there is no media source anymore. And in those counties, time after time after time, what happens is that bad things happen, right? There was a case in California where the local newspaper closed. The lawmakers gave themselves raises. This was a small community, and the mayor ended up giving himself it made $850,000 a year because no one was there at the board meetings to check any of this power. There's a reason it was called the First Amendment, and it was freedom of the press. So, no, I think in the end, that's what drives me, and I know it drives you in many ways. It's even worse in some of the rural areas that we serve. In other parts of the country, rural areas like what we serve in upstate New York and Vermont, those in other areas of the countries, those have disappeared. That's the biggest place where this has happened, where these news deserts have happened. And a lot of what happens is there's people and you know people like John Manchester, his family for generations owned the Granville Sentinel and other products up there. People like Perry Teasdale
Mm-hmm.
in Columbia Paper, um, John Johnson with even the first paper I bought, the Ravenna News. I mean, these people believe in the products, and when they can't take them over the finish line, they call. I've been fortunate enough; they've called me, and by extension, you and our team to save them. It's happening now. There's not a month goes by where I'm not fielding a call from somebody in some area that is knows what we're doing here and wants us to save their local paper.
So Mark, let me ask you a question. You mentioned three areas. You mentioned the Columbia paper. You mentioned John Manchester in the Washington County area and Vermont. You mentioned you mentioned other papers like Ravenna. You own all these papers, and you say local is very important to you and to me, but you don't live in none of those markets. So how can you own papers, focus on local, but you don't live in those markets?
Great question. And we get asked that too periodically. The reality is you can only have one. Well, let's see, I'm not wealthy enough to have more than one home at this point in my life, but I have one home. It's centrally located, so I can get to every area that I need to. But the reality is the way you overcome that is you have people that live in those markets. I mean, the people that, other than John Manchester sold to me, for example, um, there's nothing that's changed. Everybody's as local as they can be in Granville, for example. The people that produce the products in Washington County and Rutland County, Vermont, are local people for the most part. Occasionally we have to bring in somebody to fill a role on a generally a temporary basis when it comes to news gathering or such. But for the vast majority, I would tell you 95% of the people that produce for example, those papers live in that market. And it's the same everywhere. Columbia Papers that way, and Ravenna, Melanie is that way. It's on and on it goes. But the other reality is too, Warren. I believe with the formula you and I've created, if you will, if there's a secret sauce, it's this. We really need people. The feet on the street we need are for news gathering and sales. Beyond that, things can be done centrally, and that's really what we're trying to do. And in the
Mm-hmm.
end, that saves local papers. because I don't, I haven't found yet that people really care where their newspaper's paginated, which is put together and sent to the printer. I haven't found yet that people care where the ads are created that show up on your page, where the paper's printed, you know, or assembled, or even how it gets to you, through the post office, how the paper's made it to the post office. So those are things that they're very important, but they can be consolidated and you can get efficiencies and you can save money by centralizing those functions. And that's kind of, again, that's our secret sauce. That's what we've tried to do in most of the cases.
So recently, you traveled to nation's capital for Advocacy Day. What happened there? Tell us about that. And, like, why did you get selected for that, or how?
Yeah, it was an honor. I mean, I'd like to say that you and I've become pretty well known in this business for the things we're doing with Capital Region Independent Media and a couple other endeavors we have in the newspaper and media space. And so somehow through that, I was contacted by folks at the News Media Alliance, which is a headquartered in Washington, D.C. And I was fortunate enough to join 60 other news leaders, media leaders from throughout the country to fly in and advocate for legislation to help save local media. Well, there were people there that own, Mark Newhouse was there from Advanced Communications Publications. People like Mike Reed, the CEO of Gannett, the largest newspaper operator in the country, and so on. Many people were there, and I was just honored to be there. But we had a really important purpose, and the purpose was to try to get convince lawmakers. Many of them, by the way, are very well. This is bipartisan legislation that if we were in a different, more functioning, and that's my editorial, a more functioning democracy right now, if you will, or representative democracy, we'd be able to get some of this stuff passed. But we're making our points. We're getting people aware of the issue, and I think in the end, things that we're asking for long term will be um, we need to get the social media and search engines like the Googles and the Facebooks or Metas of the world to pay their fair share for what they use of our content. 40%, up to 40% of content on search, social media is news product, related products to news that we produce, and we're not compensated for that. So there's that's the long-term goal is to allow
Mhm.
newspapers to band together and collectively bargain. So right now we're not allowed to do that because that would be antitrust. Uh, so we need to get that off so we can collectively bargain and strike a deal balance between what Facebook or Google or Meta or whoever uses and what we should be compensated for. And then short term, we're talking about uh, rebates to put more journalists on the streets, tax rebates, and also to help small businesses advertise locally. So there, for the legislation we're asking for is like tax incentive, basically a write-off for local small businesses to advertise with local media companies.
Okay.
And these are small media companies. It's capped. So these aren't, the New York Times or Fox News of the world. These are small media companies like the ones you and I operate in. There's a cap on who would benefit from this. So it's really good legislation that's been thought of. And again, I was honored to go to Advocacy Day.
That's amazing. So, I mean, you're doing a lot of things, man. You've done a lot of things to support local journalism, and I know it's part of your blood. You really want to make sure these things succeed. Um, One of the things I want to talk to you about is before we move on, I want to promise the our listeners that we are going to do this like on a quarterly basis, where we're going to come and just talk to you and tell you what's going on, let you know some of the things we have going on, and also give you some room to get feedback to us. So I just want to put that out there. I just was thinking about that. So we Mark and I promise you, we will do this on a regular basis, and even have visitors come and sit down and talk to us. But Mark, I want to come to a conclusion here because we can do this all day. One of the things that you did recently, and this is really key, is to focus on the importance of journalism. And you hired someone to help us focus and do it the right way in all of our markets. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, really exciting news for us. So Melanie Lukosevich has been named the executive editor for all of Capital Region Independent Media. So the buck stops with Melanie. She will oversee all news gathering, content production for all of the papers, websites, social media, everything will be handled by Melanie. She's a major force in local journalism. Melanie had worked for me at another employer in the Hudson Valley for a decade, with me for a decade, but she'd been at that location for well over a decade. I mean, she's got experience in various aspects of the media business, including broadcasting. Um, she just brings a great mix of experience and oversight to the job. We're looking to hire local journalists in each of the areas that we operate in right now. One of the things that Melanie asked us for, as you know, Warren, was she wants to backfill some spots and hire some people to do some coverage and such. So it's really important. If you know people that are interested, that have a passion, even if they've never been a journalist before, we can train them. That's easy enough. Oh, it's easy. There's a lot involved in it, but there's resources for us to do that. But if you can write, or you have any, you're active in the public policy of your area that you live in, or your government, you attend meetings, or you'd like to, we could use you. And more importantly, more than we could use you, your fellow citizens can use you, because we really, again, the passion of local journalism. I can't say enough about how much we have for that and how much we want to do more of that. So that's one of Melanie's first things, is to hire. We've got at least three, maybe as many as four, to full-time positions available in all the markets that we cover. So if you're interested, you know, let us know. Get a hold of Warren, or get a hold of myself, or get a hold of Melanie. And we've got ways we can let you do that. Okay.
So let me ask you this question, and I'm putting you on the spot here. Um, Tomorrow's not promised to anybody. It's not promised to us. Tomorrow's not promised to us. If something would have to happen to you and you were not here tomorrow, what would be that phrase, or one word, but I'll give you a phrase that you want people to remember you by? What would be that phrase that is Mark? That was Mark.
That's a really good question. And I'd like to say, Warren, um, it's funny. I'm going to look at a note here because I keep it near my desk, and it's really good. Um, I would say that I'm a connector. I like to connect people together to solve problems, or to just connect people together to be social and help them build new relationships. I think that's the biggest thing I'd say about myself, is I'm a connector, which may or may not
Awesome.
be. Yeah, yeah.
No, so it's funny. I got that question from my wife on her show that she does, and her question is, one word, what would one word, mean about you? And my word was operator, which I'm going to give you that word for you, because you and I are similar in that. Sometimes I think we were separated at birth, but you know, back in the day when you had to call someone, you called and it was an operator there, and that operator had to pick you up and plug you in to another person. And that's what we are, man. We're operators. That's our life. Our life in media, in social life, and is connecting people and being that operator, bringing people together. And so that's why I'm enjoying this ride that we have. And I just want you to know I appreciate the blessing of me being connected with you for almost 30 years, and I'm excited about what we're doing together, man. So
Feelings mutual, Warren. I mean, it's a
you
love
got the
fest
last
on this
you
interview,
got the
but
last
it's true.
you got the last word, buddy.
Look, the last word is just, look, we're not always going to do the right things. We're going to make mistakes. It's going to happen. We'd rather work with people than against them. So if you're at all interested in helping your community, come on and reach out to us. We'd love to be on the team in some way, shape, or form, and continue to do what we think is a great work we've started. All right. Thanks.